So when people think about Africa, they often think about a continent that is plagued by civil war, where a lot of people are suffering from poverty and don't have access to basic needs like electricity, like clean drinking water and proper nutrition. And now if you're looking at the average statistics for Africa, that is true. On average, Africa is more undeveloped than other continents. But these averages are not true for every country. And today we're in a country called the Seychelles that is a glaring exception to these averages. Not only is this place more developed than any other nation in Africa, it's actually more developed than a lot of Western countries. So in this video, I'm going to take you on a journey with me as I come to the Seychelles for the first time and explore some of its most iconic spots. And we'll try to understand how this country became so successful, how it became undisputably the most developed country in Africa and arguably the richest country in Africa. We're going to try to understand if this is a model that can be replicated by other countries in Africa. And finally, we're going to talk about something that not a lot of people talk about, which is how the thing that made this country so successful might prove to become its biggest challenge in the near future. They say that the Spanish passport is apparently the best one. But not anymore when he's traveling with me, because he just got held for an hour and a half and humiliated. So we are in Seychelles airport and it took like 1.5 hours literally for us to go through immigration. I think a Bangladeshi citizen coming on vacation set off a lot of red flags, and especially the fact that I'm not coming on a traditional honeymoon, I'm coming with Manu. And then we're going to Madagascar. And I checked a lot of stuff. They took down all of our hotel information, called the hotels. They also asked for not only our flight out of here to Madagascar, but our flight from Madagascar to Mauritius, which is the next country we're planning on going to. But after checking everything, after looking at what I do, seeing my videos and stuff, I was able to come through with all of my cameras and all my drones. And now we're gonna take out some cash. Oh, this is the best part. They made Manu go to the ATM and prove that he has money in the bank account and that he didn't have enough and he had to transfer it. It's funny. But anyways, I'm gonna go to the ATM now, get some money, then we're gonna rent a car and head out. So we got a SIM card. The minimum SIM card package for 10 gigabytes is like $43. For 2 people, that's $85. So SIM cards do add up. But I don't know what the Wi-Fi here is like, so it's better to have data than not have it. Also, you can see the flight schedule for this airport, and there's like 1 flight every 3 hours, so not the busiest airport. Now we need to find our car to rent and go to our place. Unfortunately, the car that I had booked for 55 euros, we didn't get out past immigration in time, so they gave it to someone else. So we're booking the cheapest car we could find at the airport, literally. That is an auto, and it's costing us 100 euros a day, which is crazy. Okay, we finally made it outside the airport. This place looks insanely gorgeous. We're going towards our car and now we're gonna explore. We're finally in the car, headed towards our place, which is 20 minutes away. Okay, we just stopped on the side of the road to sort of like get our bearings together and figure out how to go to our hotel. It seems like we ended up on some port that is not for passengers, but for goods. And right next to us, pretty much everywhere we've been so far has been the very blue or turquoise water of the ocean, of the Indian Ocean right here. Seychelles is actually an archipelago of 115 islands that is 1,000 miles or 1,600 kilometers off the actual continent of Africa, although it still counts as a part of Africa. It is the smallest country in Africa in terms of land area and population, and it only has a population of around 100,000 people. Out of those 100,000 people, 98% people live on 3 islands, all of which we're going to visit in our 4-day trip, and 90% live on this main island of Mahé, which is where we're staying on the first and the last day. A fun fact about Seychelles is actually all of this was like uninhabited until European colonization, I think in around the 16th century, but more on that from the next spot. Okay, we've arrived at our first honeymoon room for the trip. The lady helped us in. It doesn't look bad. They're saying the tap water is drinkable. Hopefully it is. I'll find out soon. But this looks really nice. And you actually see a gorgeous view of the ocean from right here with the beaches and the mountains. It's like pretty sick. Now we're gonna just go out and explore this country. Parking here and just driving here is surprisingly more complicated than we expected. There's just a lot of traffic because it's all like 2-lane roads and a lot of cars, it seems like. But we managed to find a place to park. Right now we're in Victoria, which is the capital of Seychelles, and it is one of the smallest capitals in the world with around 25,000 people. Ever since the European powers settled this place, there were competing interests in this land between the British and the French, and that kind of reflects in the languages of this place to this day. The three official languages of Seychelles is French, British, and Seychellois Creole. I can't pronounce that. Although English is often used in government purposes. In the middle of Victoria, we found this like street market on a side alley, and the markets here really reflect the culture. And the culture is like a mix of a lot of different places. There's a lot of African in here, but there's also like South Asian influences. There's also like colonial influences, obviously. And that's because the history of this island getting inhabited, and then like people bringing slaves, and then people bringing indentured servants from South Asia, and then people from Europe migrating here. The people here really look like a mix of everything else, but mainly African. Different colonial powers, like I said earlier, were competing over the place. But in the 19th century, this came totally under the British. And in 1903, they built that thing in front of me. Right in the middle of the city is the Victoria Clock Tower, which was built in 1903 to commemorate Queen Victoria, who had died recently. And you know what's funny is that I was in Malaysia filming the very last video that I filmed, and in the middle of that they also had like a clock tower. You seem to find that in places so far around the world that were connected by British colonialism. Okay, I'm in front of a very beautiful and ornately decorated temple in the middle of Victoria, and like 2 minutes walk away that way is this cathedral, which I think is the most important cathedral in Victoria. And then like a 5 minutes walk more that way is the Victoria Mosque, which is also a very beautiful mosque, which has one of the most scenic backdrops that I've ever seen for a mosque that like has like the mountains going up right behind it. So 75% of people living in the Seychelles are Christian. But what is really cool about it is how harmoniously people from different faiths live in Seychelles. It's an African country with multiple religions, but no history of inter-religious or even inter-ethnic conflict at any point in its history. A very important update, I have managed to crash my drone to a phase that I don't think is recoverable. So hopefully I'll find a drone somehow in Seychelles or Madagascar in the next day or two. Oh man, so I guess it's a good thing we canceled our next spot and came back home to figure out what to do with the drone, because it is pouring right now. This island is like schizophrenic weather. It goes sunny, rain, sunny, rain, sunny, and now this. So then I posted on Facebook asking my viewers if they can help me find a drone in Seychelles. And very, very soon, I somehow ended up finding someone with the drone. I found one of my viewers from Bangladesh who is really nice and literally like was able to give me his drone that I can use for the rest of the trip, so he saved the visuals for the rest of the trip. It stopped raining again, so we're trying to go to the next spot, and while we're driving there I'm going to try to catch you up on the story of Seychelles that I was saying earlier. So Seychelles got its independence from the UK in 1976, and since then has become the African country with the best functioning democracy. Like I mentioned before, there's no history of ethnic conflicts or civil wars, but this country has also had peaceful democratic elections since at least the 90s, and has universal free healthcare, a very high literacy rate, and a lot of other things that only developed countries usually get to enjoy. Because of all these things, it has the highest Human Development Index ranking in all of Africa. Now, is Seychelles so rich and successful because of good governance and all of these other things like low corruption and no conflicts? Partially, yes, but there's only one main reason why Seychelles is so successful, and the best way to show you that is to be at our next location. So I'm in this very interesting part of Seychelles right now, on Mahé basically, but it's a different island called Eden Island. And it is interesting because it is an entirely man-made island that was built in the 2000s purely because of tourism. And this is connected to Mahé with a bridge. Between 1976, when Seychelles got independence from the UK, and 2015, the GDP of this country grew by 700%. And the purchasing power of this country grew by 1,600%, which is crazy. It is technically, by some rankings, considered the highest GDP per capita in all of Africa. Now, there's other metrics that say Mauritius has overtaken it, but either way, it's 1 or 2, so it's basically as rich as it gets in Africa. And this growth in the economy was primarily led by tourism, basically. And to this day, tourism employs like 30% of the labor force. And the best place to see the effects of this tourism is Eden Island, where you see this marina with hundreds of like fancy private yachts, fancy cafes, and a bunch of fancy resorts or like places to live right over there. Right now we're gonna try to get dinner at one of these really fancy cafes by this private marina. All right, we found a restaurant right by the marina where there's nothing but tourists. I don't know if these are the most rich tourists on the island. They probably are not, because meals are $20 instead of $50, which at the fine dining places you'd spend. But the food seems to be nice. So we're getting dinner for tonight over here. I got this burger here that is literally the size of my hands. I don't know if my mouth is big enough to fit it, but we're gonna try it. I'm gonna try it from the skinniest side possible. Oh man, I'm gonna make a mess here. So I was talking about tourism and why there's so many tourists coming here. And I might be asking, what do tourists come here to see? Probably not a bunch of yachts. And to show you the natural wonders that tourists come here to see, we're gonna go to the next island. Okay, we're about to go home today, and we ended up in a professional football game, which is Division 3. Which, if you do the math, that's 3 divisions of football in a country of 100,000 people. And still feels pretty competitive. There's like referees and linesmen, and one guy on a stretcher who got injured the moment we walked in. So the next day we took some ferries to a different island, and it turned out to be one of the roughest ocean journeys I have taken in my life. People were throwing up and almost dying left and right. So we have come on 2 very bumpy ferries from Mahe to Praali, the other island, and then La Digue, the 3rd island, which is very remote. And still then I've managed to find 4 Bangladeshis the moment I landed here who recognized me from my videos. Now we gotta take these bikes to go to this beach, which is the only thing I knew about the Seychelles till like a few years ago. It's supposed to be one of the most pretty beaches on earth. So let's see how this goes. We had to take these bicycles for like 2 or 3 kilometers. It was like a 20-minute drive, and then we drove past a lot of rocks, and then we finally came to this entrance to the famous beach, Anste Source or something like that, and it is actually insane. You might have seen this if you're a Windows user on the Windows home screen. That is literally how I found out about this place, I think like 5 to 7 years ago, and marked it as somewhere I wanted to go. There's a few tourists, it's not that many people. And what really makes this place special is all these rocks that you don't see anywhere else. At least I've never seen anywhere else. These granite-like surfaces sticking out of the sand. And it's like that because Seychelles is like a very weird chain of islands. These are not volcanic islands created by volcanic explosions, but rather like some continental mass that like split away when Madagascar and a lot of places like split away from India 90 million years ago. So that makes it really, really cool and really unique. And of course the water is super turquoise and like the sand is white and everything else. Now we're gonna take off our shoes, get in the water, and get some drone shots. Okay, the beach is really nice, and we tried to get some sexy shots by the flag and failed, both of us. But the best part about this afternoon so far were these mango shakes that we just had that cost like $6 each. Wow, this place is actually insane. This is so cool. My GoPro wasn't working, so I just brought my main camera here, not advisable, but I wanted to get these shots. Hope I don't fall on the way out, because there's a lot of reef and little rocks. And I see why this place is ranked as one of the best beaches on earth. The best view of these rocks is either from a drone, which you're probably not gonna get because you're not gonna fly up in the air to see something, or from actually in the water. So when you go out in the water, like maybe 50 to 100 meters, like 100 yards out. Then you really start to see the view, and I think this is one of the best views I've ever seen of a beach. Like the rocks just look like they're artificially made, like they don't look real. Good job on the photo shoot. He just earned himself his tickets to the next country. It's like the Hunger Games, you get eliminated if you don't take a good thumbnail. Okay, the views are great here, but let's go back to the question that I asked in the intro about whether the model that Seychelles has used to use tourism to further its development, can that be transferred to other countries in Africa? So the way Seychelles does tourism is very different from a lot of other places. Seychelles follows a model of high-ticket tourism, kind of like Maldives in Asia, where they don't go for a lot of cheap tourists, but they go for tourists that spend a lot of money. The average person visiting Seychelles actually spends over $1,500, and that's not surprising when you look at our accommodation prices that we've been paying for the last couple of days. Basically, the cheapest place we've stayed in the last 3 nights has been like, I think more than $130. Even mid-range hotels cost at least like $200 to $300. So it's not hard to spend a lot of money. So they're basically doing what the opposite of places like Thailand is doing, where everything is cheap and they try to get a lot of backpackers and millions of travelers to come and spend a little bit of money. They're trying to get very rich people to come here who are each willing to spend a lot of money, and like even when you're going around here, there's like so many fees and stuff. Just to enter the park, it was 10 euros. To rent the bike, it was 10 euros. You know, to get a taxi, it's like 30 euros. We end up just renting out a car for the day. On top of that, the Seychelles government has made environmentalism a cornerstone of their policies. So a lot of the islands and the surrounding waters next to the islands are actually protected. This ensures that tourists that care about the environment, that care about eco-friendly spaces, are often coming. So it's not a cheap place to visit, but it is exclusive and it is protected, and that gives tourists their peace of mind. Now, as for can this be copied by other countries in Africa for success? Yeah, they can try to be less corrupt and try to have government policies like the Seychelles has had, which has led to like high literacy rate, higher standards of living. But Seychelles does enjoy a lot of advantages that other African countries don't. It is a very small population, so there's like low population pressure. It's a fairly homogenous population. Even though there's like different religions, there has been no history of ethnic conflicts or like troubles between the small number of people that have lived here. We have to realize that like Seychelles is very isolated. It's one of the most isolated countries in Africa. It's like more than 1,000 kilometers off the coast of Africa, so they're not suffering from problems in its neighboring countries like a lot of other African countries do. A lot of mainland African countries, on top of having their own problems, their own history of divisions often created by colonial powers and inter-ethnic conflicts, they also have to worry about like what's happening in the countries next door, and often like have to deal with influx of refugees escaping other wars, which often destabilizes their own countries. So what Seychelles has right now with the good governance, you could say that this could be an inspiration for other African countries, but it can't be an exact model for most, because there are too many dissimilarities between what the Seychelles has and what most other African countries has. I think the coolest thing to me about the Seychelles is these animals behind me, the giant Aldabra tortoises. They're huge. They can weigh up to 250 kilograms and they move as slow as you'd expect them to from the cartoons. And they can live up to like 200 years. There have been recorded cases of certain tortoises living 150 to 200 years here. And there's actually more than 100,000 of these giant tortoises in the Seychelles, which I believe is maybe the largest number of wild tortoises anywhere. There's one island that has tens of thousands of tortoises just like roaming around. Hello, turtle. A guy just came before us and fed it a bunch of fruits, so I'm guessing it's expecting fruits from us. Look at this! One little neck rub. I didn't know tortoises like to get pet till right now. We thought he wanted some food. What he really wanted was like a little bit of petting. The tourism here is great, but when your economy depends this much on the tourism, what happens when the crowds become too much or the people stop coming? I touched on this on the intro, but what makes Seychelles so special might also become its biggest challenge. More on that from a different island again. So we're back in Victoria, the capital of Seychelles, back in Mahé, and I want to talk about the potential problems that Seychelles is facing in the upcoming future. And a lot of it has to do with the limited diversification of the economy. Now, there is a fishing industry that is pretty important, but it is nowhere as important as the tourism industry. So this country is overly dependent on tourism. What that means is that when there's something like the COVID-19 pandemic or any other shock that would like cause tourism to fall, the whole country can suffer greatly from something like that. Now, on top of that, because it is a country with a lot of tourists and a lot of foreigners that have historically come and bought land, although that is limited now to some extent, this meant that the prices are very inflated and very high compared to other countries in Africa where people can live and get a much better life for much less. And I was talking to a local a few days ago who was the owner of our guest house, and he was telling us how things have become so expensive that it's often hard for someone to live comfortably off of just one job. He was an IT professional, but on top of that, he was renting out a house, he was renting out cars, and doing several things just to live a comfortable life. And if too many people come to visit, this place might also get overdeveloped and this might damage the environment, which is the thing that all these tourists are coming to see. And things are pretty expensive over here. We just had a meal, pretty much basic meals we're looking at everywhere were like over $20, $25. So we ended up finding a Chinese place with pretty good food. That is like, I think, under $5 to $7 per meal, but this is not healthy and not something you can eat every day and sustain yourself in a healthy way. And then we went to a grocery store to buy some stuff earlier, and things are way more expensive than you'd find in the average African country. And then on top of that, there is the risk of global warming and climate change and rising sea levels, which means the things that all these tourists come here to see, the beautiful beaches, might be underwater in the not so distant future. The country of Seychelles is often considered a miracle country by some because of all the things it was able to achieve that a lot of African countries couldn't. But no miracle is sustained without a lot of careful planning. Now the question is, are the people of Seychelles and the government of Seychelles, will they be able to do what is necessary to stay ahead of the curve and to make sure that their country remains prosperous? That is it for this video. If you like this video, don't forget to like this video. If you want to watch more videos like this, feel free to subscribe to my channel. If you want real-time travel updates, feel free to follow me on Instagram at Nadir on the Go. I'll catch you guys in the next video from probably somewhere else in Africa on another African island.